inside Jadon Sancho's fall from grace to 10th-tier Flixton, who wants Man United exile and why he's still a free agent, how his career in England really unraveled, and what United sources say about his bad boy reputation. The sadness in the Jadon Sancho story is that he has succumbed to the very thing he warned against. As a fresh-faced teenager, Sancho sat down for an interview on Borussia Dortmund's YouTube channel in which he showed maturity beyond his years by highlighting the pitfalls of being a young superstar. "I've seen a lot of young talents disappear because it's come too early and it's got to their heads," he said in that 2019 chat, which now looks prophetic as he trains at an amateur football club as the most high-profile free agent in the game today. "Luckily enough, I've got great people around me to keep me grounded and humble, and they tell me what I'm doing is not enough." People have a lot to say when it comes to Sancho.
Fruit flies taking over your kitchen? This discreet plug-in trap uses light to attract flying insects, then captures them on a replaceable adhesive cartridge without noisy zapping or messy sprays. Want to get the best verified deal and see full details? Visit grabdeal.us/1 right now.
There are certainly a great many people on social media who take pleasure in goading, mocking, and ridiculing him at every turn. Each and every indiscretion is, weirdly, celebrated. Others who have worked with him and insist the bad boy public perception is far detached from the quiet, introverted reality are pained by how the past 8 years have played out. Jadon Sancho, pictured with Flixton boss Alex Mortimer, has been using the 10th-tier side's facilities in Manchester. It's a sign of the times for former wonderkid Sancho, who left Man United in the summer after a disappointing 5 years at the club. The fact Flixton FC, a 10th division team in Greater Manchester, felt it necessary to qualify that they had not taken Sancho on trial in recent days underlined the absurdity of a career that once promised so much, but has now taken too many wrong turns. To clarify, Jadon was not on trial with the club and was not involved in any transfer discussions, Flixton posted on Instagram. "He simply used our facilities for a private training session to maintain his fitness while preparing for the next chapter of his career. There are agreements in principle, we're told, with a number of clubs across Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, while clubs in Europe, with Turkey one potential landing spot, also paying close attention. It is Sancho who is taking his time to choose his next destination. But the days of Real Madrid, of Paris Saint-Germain, and the game's elite fighting among themselves to catch Sancho's eye are long gone. For that fresh-faced teenager that had the world at his feet, it really wasn't meant to go like this." During Sancho's first spell at Borussia Dortmund, the club he joined after turning his back on Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, it felt like his potential was limitless. An 18-year-old scaring the life out of seasoned Premier League players. "I love it," Rio Ferdinand, then working as a pundit for BT Sport, gushed after a game against Tottenham Hotspur at Wembley. "I think he'll be the best English player in the coming years." Nobody was mocking Sancho or Ferdinand back then. It was not absurd to see the teenage winger as a potential Ballon d'Or winner. But there were also the first signs of problems ahead. First, when Sancho was dropped and fined for returning late from England duty ahead of a match against Borussia Mönchengladbach in October 2019. A fortnight later, he was hooked after 36 minutes against Bayern Munich by boss Lucien Favre, who later said it was because Sancho was not good enough. Privately, Sancho and his camp felt he was being hung out to dry. Sancho and his camp felt hung out to dry after then Borussia Dortmund boss Lucien Favre hooked him after 36 minutes of a game against Bayern Munich. Figures in Germany have remained fiercely defensive of Sancho, but timekeeping became an area of concern. In 2018, Phil Foden and Sancho were dropped for an England under-19s win over Latvia after turning up late to a training session. Nemanja Matic, a former teammate of Sancho's at Manchester United, named and shamed him as a timekeeping offender 3 years ago. Among the players who would always be late were Paul Pogba and Jadon Sancho. Matic told Austrian media outlet YU Planet. "The rest of us who were always on time were angry, so we decided to form a kind of internal disciplinary committee with me serving as its president. I put a sheet of paper up on the wall where I documented the names of individuals arriving late. During one particular season, we collected around £75,000 in fines. Sancho's timekeeping issues are said to have been ironed out in recent years. But back to the early days at Dortmund, when he was a young, dazzling talent with the world's biggest clubs queuing up to get him. Manchester United pursued him relentlessly for 2 years as their great hope for their troubled right-wing position before finally sealing a £73 million move. "I always knew that I would return to England one day," said Sancho, who signed a 5-year deal at Old Trafford at the age of 21. "The chance to join Manchester United is a dream come true, and I just cannot wait to perform in the Premier League." Sancho described his move to United as a dream come true, but in reality, it was a nightmare. Only what followed was not a dream, but a nightmare. A nightmare that started when he was hospitalized with an ear infection, then saw Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the man who signed him and planned to build around him, sacked before Sancho had even scored. Soon a no-nonsense disciplinarian in Erik ten Hag was calling him out publicly before sending him into exile, where he no longer had access to the first-team canteen and was eating out a plastic container and training with academy players. Then came a loan spell at Chelsea that saw the Blues pay a £5 million penalty fee to avoid signing him permanently. Another loan at Aston Villa that saw Villa pass up on a permanent move as they instead signed Alejandro Garnacho, and the end of his United career as he walking away for nothing. We will never truly know how things would have gone had Sancho and Ten Hag never crossed paths. Those inside United speak of a complete mismatch of personalities. Sancho is an introverted character. Daily Mail Sports spoke to him in Dortmund following a man-of-the-match performance against PSV Eindhoven, where he was polite, cordial, and a far cry from the problem child some desperately want him to be. With that introversion comes a need for an arm-round-the-shoulder manager, rather than the coolness with which Ten Hag operated. An argument can be made that Ten Hag was the worst type of manager for Sancho and Sancho the worst type of player for Ten Hag. Sancho made 41 appearances in his first full season under Ten Hag before he took time away from the first team in December 2022 after his manager cited physical and mental factors, a move which privately was not welcomed by those close to the player. Pointing to mental health was clumsy from the manager. But then came the rift that Sancho's career has, truthfully, never fully recovered from. Former United boss Erik ten Hag, right, was a terrible personality match with Sancho. In September 2023, Ten Hag omitted Sancho from a 3-1 defeat at Arsenal due to, in his opinion, a lack of effort in training. "On his performance in training, we didn't select him," Ten Hag said afterwards. "You have to reach the level every day at Manchester United." It was typically blunt from Ten Hag, but nothing that he hadn't communicated privately. Sancho disagreed that his effort, having been tasked with acting as an Arsenal player in training alongside his fellow teammates outside of Ten Hag's starting exile, was any worse than that of his peers. So, with the help of those around him, Sancho hit post on an infamous, but now deleted, social media jab at his manager. His Manchester United career would never be the same again. "Please don't believe everything you read," the statement read. "I will not allow people saying things that is sick, completely untrue. I have conducted myself very well in training this week. I believe there are other reasons for this matter that I won't go into. I've been a scapegoat for a long time, which isn't fair." Ten Hag was furious, and figures at United found themselves caught in the crossfire of trying to repair a relationship that many, including players, desperately wanted to see resolved. Ten Hag demanded an apology that never came. On Sancho's side, there was a feeling that he was being singled out where others were never handed the same punishment. So he trained alone with academy players, many of whom, off the record, praised his personality and candor, while he was not allowed into senior facilities. He got changed alone and ate out of black lunchboxes as he wasn't allowed into the first-team canteen. It was unprecedented treatment that will never be seen again, having since been outlawed by FIFA and FIFPro. It's only 2 years since Sancho was playing in a Champions League final at Wembley for Borussia Dortmund. At Chelsea, which followed a second loan spell at Dortmund, where he was lauded as a homecoming hero, Sancho was a popular figure. He was back home in London, settled into the dressing room, and had a major ally in Blues recruitment chief Joe Shields, who vouched for Sancho's character after working with him at Manchester City. A key part of the pitch from then, Chelsea boss Enzo Maresca, was about platforming Sancho's game in Maresca's wing-dominant system, which was reliant on wide players winning their 1v1 battles. While that would later become a bone of contention, Maresca found Sancho's output frustrating in the 1v1 department. Chelsea sources remain insistent that they were still working to acquire him permanently. He scored as Chelsea beat Real Betis in the Conference League final, and while the loan wasn't flawless, some Chelsea sources recalled how Sancho would, on occasion, complain about teammates not passing him the ball. It felt a good fit for club and player. Chelsea and Sancho seemed a good fit during his loan there in 2024-25, but the Blues opted against signing him permanently. Chelsea were covering around half of his £250,000 a week wages during the loan, but when it came to a permanent arrangement, they were seeking a drastically reduced salary, which saw the move break down and the Blues enact a £5 million penalty clause to escape their £25 million obligation to buy. Then came the next roll of the dice, the late loan swoop from Aston Villa in a regrettable transfer window that would go on to cost Monchi, their then sporting director, his job in the Midlands. Sancho was never Unai Emery's go-to man, and while the Spaniard did warm to Sancho towards the end, he loves rejuvenating high-caliber players. It always remained a remote prospect that this would be anything more than a temporary arrangement. Insiders insist there were no issues with his attitude or performance in training, and Sancho didn't allow his career to be derailed by a humiliating substitution after coming off the bench against Manchester City in October 2025. Timekeeping was no longer the issue with Sancho. Now criticism came on his ability to change a game. Since signing for United, Sancho, who has never shown blistering pace, hasn't hit 10 goals and assists in a single league season. A staggering statistic for a player who scored 50 goals and managed 64 assists in 137 games across 4 seasons in Germany. At 20, Sancho was the best young player on the planet bar none, Ferdinand claimed, and many other pundits were ready to back that up. At 26, Sancho has played for Manchester United, Chelsea and Aston Villa, gone back to Borussia Dortmund, and is now weighing up what the future holds and whether that future is to be played out in the Middle East. There will be finger-pointing on all sides, and the blame game, in truth, should be split across the board. There should be no joy in the Sancho story, only sadness.